Welcome back, dear friends, to our peaceful sanctuary of art and reflection. Tonight, we embark on a deeply moving journey, one that takes us to the final moments of creative genius. We will explore the last paintings created by 10 remarkable artists, works completed just before death claimed them, paintings that serve as farewell letters to the world. These final works are often the most revealing. Some artists knew death was approaching and painted with urgent purpose. Others were taken suddenly, leaving their final canvases as unintended goodbyes. In each case, these paintings offer us something profound, a glimpse into how creative souls face mortality, what they choose to say when time is running out, and what beauty they leave behind as their parting gift. So find your comfortable place. Let the day concerns drift away, and join me as we stand before 10 extraordinary final works. Let us honor these artists by truly seeing what they wanted us to remember. Let us begin this gentle meditation on art, mortality, and the eternal human need to create. 1. Wheatfield with Crows by Vincent van Gogh. We begin with Vincent van Gogh in the wheatfields near Auvers-sur-Oise, France. In July 1890, Van Gogh painted Wheatfield with Crows just days before his death, at age 37. Whether by suicide or accident, the circumstances remain debated, but what is certain is that this painting captures a soul in turmoil. Picture a vast wheat field beneath a turbulent sky. The wheat is ripe, golden yellow, painted with the signature thick, expressive brushstrokes of Van Gogh, but the sky above is dark, almost menacing, deep blues and blacks that press down on the landscape. 3 paths divide the wheat field, leading in different directions, going nowhere and everywhere at once. And above it all, crows fly, black shapes against that troubled sky, their flight ambiguous. Are they fleeing or attacking, arriving or departing? The painting vibrates with energy and unease. Van Gogh applied the paint so thickly that you can see every mark of the brush, every decision, every emotion translated directly into color and form. This is not a peaceful countryside scene. It is a landscape of the soul, and that soul is clearly struggling. By July 1890, Van Gogh was staying in Auvers under the care of Dr. Gachet, who tried to help him manage his mental health. Vincent had been painting prolifically, creating 70 paintings in just 70 days. This incredible burst of productivity suggests a man racing against something. Perhaps his own demons, perhaps a sense that time was short. In letters to his brother Theo, Vincent wrote about feeling both hopeful and desperate. He expressed deep sadness and isolation, yet also pride in his work. Those 3 paths in the wheat field have been interpreted endlessly. Some see them as representing life choices. Others view them as the impossibility of moving forward. The crows are often read as symbols of death or doom, but Van Gogh also loved birds and painted them as symbols of freedom. Perhaps these crows represent both: the freedom of death, the escape from suffering that he may have been contemplating. Art historians have debated whether Wheatfield with Crows was truly the final painting of Van Gogh. He may have completed one or two others in those final days, but this painting has become symbolic of his ending because it so perfectly captures his state of mind, the beauty and terror existing together, the struggle between light and darkness, hope and despair. 2. A Bar at the Folies Bergere by Edouard Manet. Edouard Manet, one of the pioneers of modern art, died in 1883 at age 51. His final years were marked by increasing pain and limited mobility. His last major masterpiece, completed in 1882, was A Bar at the Folies Bergere. Imagine standing at a bar in Paris, facing a young barmaid. She stands behind a marble counter laden with bottles, fruit, and flowers. Behind her, a mirror reflects the crowded, glittering nightclub, dancers, acrobats, and the fashionable audience. The barmaid looks directly at you, her expression difficult to read. Her face is a mask of professional neutrality, but something is strange about the reflection. The angle does not quite make sense. The reflection of the barmaid shows her turned to the side, speaking with a gentleman in a top hat. The spatial logic is impossible, yet Manet painted it deliberately. This is not a mistake, but a choice. By 1882, Manet was seriously ill. His left leg was causing him terrible pain, eventually requiring amputation just 2 weeks before his death. He could barely walk, could barely stand at his easel, yet he continued painting with fierce determination. He knew he was dying. He painted this large, complex canvas while enduring constant pain, standing for as long as he could before having to rest, returning again and again to complete it. The ambiguous expression of the barmaid has fascinated viewers for over a century. She is surrounded by pleasure, champagne, lights, entertainment, yet seems disconnected from it all. Some scholars read her as a symbol of modern alienation. Manet was painting a world he was about to leave. The glittering Paris, nightlife, the cafes and theaters he loved. In the distant gaze of this barmaid, we might see his own sense of separation, of watching life continue while knowing he would not. In his last weeks, when he could no longer manage large canvases, Manet painted small still lifes of flowers that friends brought to his bedside. These are heartbreakingly simple: a few roses, some lilacs, painted with his remaining strength. They are his true farewell, tiny bursts of color created by a dying man who loved beauty until his last breath. 3. Portrait of Johanna Staude by Gustav Klimt. Gustav Klimt died suddenly in February 1918 at age 55. He left behind numerous unfinished works in his studio, but one of the most haunting was Portrait of Johanna Staude, begun in 1917 and left unfinished at his death. Picture a woman emerging from canvas, her face and upper body fully realized in the decorative style of Klimt, her features delicate and thoughtful. But below, the painting dissolves into sketches and blank spaces. Her dress is outlined, but not filled with the elaborate patterns Klimt was famous for. It is as if she is materializing from a dream or fading into one. The completed portions show Klimt at his mature peak, but the unfinished areas are raw, showing his process. His hand stopped mid-creation in 1917 and early 1918. Klimt was at the height of his fame, but troubled by the war ravaging Europe. He continued working on several portraits simultaneously, moving between canvases as inspiration struck. He was meticulous, often taking years to complete a portrait. On January 11th, 1918, Klimt suffered a stroke. He was taken to the hospital, where he died 1 month later. There is something profound about seeing the unfinished work of Klimt. The completed face shows his mastery, but the incomplete areas show us his process, his thinking, the journey, rather than just the destination. Johanna Staude remains haunting because she exists between states, partly manifest, partly potential. It is as if the death of Klimt froze her in the moment of becoming. This unfinished work reveals that death comes without regard for completion. Klimt had more portraits to finish, more golden spirals to paint, more beauty to create. But his hand was stopped. Yet there is beauty in the incomplete. The unfinished areas are evidence of creative struggle, of work in progress, of the eternal incompleteness of all human endeavor. 4. Mont Sainte Victoire by Paul Cezanne. Paul Cezanne died in October 1906 at age 67 after collapsing while painting outdoors in a thunderstorm. His final paintings include landscapes of Mont Sainte Victoire, the mountain he painted obsessively. Imagine a mountain rising against the sky, painted in the revolutionary style of Cezanne. Not a realistic depiction, but a geometric construction of color plane. Blues, greens, ochres, and violets build up the forms. The mountain is both solid and atmospheric. Cezanne painted Mont Sainte Victoire dozens of times in his final years, becoming increasingly abstract in his approach. He was not trying to record what the mountain looked like, but to find its essential structure, its underlying geometry, its truth beyond appearance. In October 1906, Cezanne was working outdoors, standing before his easel in the landscape. A thunderstorm came suddenly. He could have sought shelter, but he continued painting. Rain soaked him. Finally, he collapsed. He developed pneumonia quickly. Even from his bed, he demanded his paints, wanting to continue working. But his strength failed. He died on October 22nd. The late work of Cezanne was revolutionary. He was dismantling centuries of painting tradition, treating nature as the cylinder, the sphere, and the cone. His approach would directly inspire Cubism and the entire development of modern art. But there was nothing cold or intellectual about his work. He painted with passion, with a kind of religious intensity. His final works reveal an artist still searching, still questioning. He wrote to a friend shortly before his death, "I am old and ill, and I have sworn to die painting." He kept that oath. His death came directly from his refusal to stop working. This tells us something profound about creative dedication, that for some artists, creating is not separate from living. 5. The Turkish Bath by Jan August Dominique Ingres. Jan August Dominique Ingres was 82 years old when he completed the Turkish Bath in 1862. He died 5 years later in 1867, but this painting represents his final major work, a culmination of a lifetime of studying the female form. The Turkish Bath is unusual, painted on a circular canvas called a tondo. It shows a crowded bathhouse full of nude women in various poses, reclining, bathing, playing music, or lost in conversation. The composition spirals inward, drawing the eye around this intimate world. The bodies of the women are rendered with the characteristic smooth technique of Ingres. Skin like porcelain, no visible brushstrokes. At 82, Ingres painted this scene of female sensuality with the same passion he had brought to similar subjects as a young man. Ingres had painted variations of these poses throughout his long career. Bodies from earlier works reappear here, as if the Turkish Bath is a summation, a gathering of all the female forms he had loved painting over 6 decades. The circular format encloses the scene completely, making it a private world. The circle also suggests completeness, perfection, the eternal. It removes the scene from normal linear time. These women exist in a timeless moment, a kind of paradise imagined by an old man who knew his own youth was long past. The Turkish Bath reveals that aesthetic passion can last an entire lifetime. At 82, Ingres was still devoted to beauty, still seeking perfection in line and form. His hand was steady, his eye sharp, his dedication undiminished. In creating this enclosed paradise, Ingres was perhaps constructing a vision of eternity, a place outside time where beauty never fades. 6. Self-Portrait with Bandaged Ear by Vincent van Gogh. We return briefly to Vincent van Gogh, but to a different kind of ending. Let us consider Self-Portrait with Bandaged Ear, painted in January 1889. While not his final painting chronologically, this work reveals Van Gogh confronting himself at a moment of crisis, a kind of death and rebirth. Van Gogh looks at us with steady, serious eyes. The right side of his head is wrapped in white bandages. He wears a dark coat and a fur hat. Behind him are a canvas on an easel and a Japanese print on the wall. His expression is calm, as if asking, "This is who I am now. Can you still see me?" The bandage is the whitest element, drawing the eye immediately to his wound, his damage, his pain made visible. In December 1888, Van Gogh had been living in Arles with fellow artist Paul Gauguin. After a confrontation, Van Gogh experienced a psychotic break. He cut off part of his left ear with a razor. He was hospitalized, then returned to his yellow house. Alone and shaken, he painted this self-portrait, documenting what he had done to himself, confronting his damaged reflection. This painting represents a kind of death, the death of his dream of artistic brotherhood with Gauguin, the death of his hope for stability. Van Gogh painted himself with unflinching honesty. The calm expression is what makes this portrait so powerful. He simply looks at us, showing us his wound behind him. The canvas on the easel reminds us that despite everything, despite pain, illness, and self-harm, he is still an artist. After painting this self-portrait, Van Gogh had less than 2 years to live. He would voluntarily enter an asylum. He would experience periods of clarity and distress, and he would never stop painting. This portrait shows us that confronting our wounds can be an act of courage. Van Gogh did not hide what he had done. He documented it, turned it into art, and transformed personal catastrophe into a statement about human resilience. 7. Abstraction by Georgia O'Keeffe. Georgia O'Keeffe lived to be 98 years old, dying in 1986. Her true final paintings were created in the 1970s and early 1980s, as her vision was failing. Let us consider one of her very last, Abstraction, painted around 1980, when she was 92 years old and nearly blind. The late abstract works of O'Keeffe are remarkable. Using assistants to help her with technical aspects, she created paintings of simplified forms, circles, ovals, and curves, in subtle colors. These are essential, reduced to the minimum necessary to convey presence and feeling. One shows a simple black circle with a blue crescent beside it, sky and moon, perhaps, or simply form and void. The simplicity is profound. After decades of painting flowers and landscapes, her vision had been refined to these pure essences. By the late 1970s, the macular degeneration of O'Keeffe had progressed severely. She could barely see, yet she continued to paint with the help of young assistants. She could not see details anymore, so she painted what she could still perceive, broad forms and the feel of space and color. O'Keeffe final works reveal an artist adapting to loss without surrendering to it. She found a new way to paint. These late paintings show us that creativity can continue even as abilities diminish. There's a kind of wisdom in these works. After a lifetime of looking intensely at the world, O'Keeffe was painting from memory and inner vision rather than outer sight. In her last years, completely blind, O'Keeffe stopped painting entirely. But she had worked until that became impossible. When she died at 98, she left behind a body of work that spanned nearly the entire 20th century. Feel the quiet power of reduction, of vision refined to its purest form. O'Keeffe's determination inspires us to adapt rather than surrender. 8. Self-Portrait Between the Clock and the Bed by Edvard Munch. Edvard Munch lived to be 80, dying in 1944. His final works were self-portraits, haunting images of an old man confronting his own mortality. The most powerful of these is Self-Portrait Between the Clock and the Bed. Between 1943, picture an old man standing in his bedroom. To his left, a grandfather clock with no hands, time present but not measurable. To his right, his bed with a vivid, colorful bedspread. The old man stands between these two symbols, between time and rest, between life and death, looking directly at us. The face of Munch is pale, almost ghostly. He wears a dark suit that makes him look formal but somber. The colors of the bedspread are violent and alive in stark contrast to his fading presence. By 1940, Munch was living alone in his house outside Oslo. Norway had been invaded by Nazi Germany. He was isolated, watching the world convulse in war. He continued to paint, but now his subjects were increasingly himself, studying his own aging face, his own approaching death. That clock with no hands is devastating. Time exists but cannot be measured. How much is left? The clock does not say. The bed represents rest, sleep, death. Its vivid colors suggest life and energy, but it is still a bed, a place of final rest. Munch stands before it, but has not yet lain down. He is still upright, still present, still painting. His position captures the experience of old age, standing between measured time and timeless rest. This self-portrait reveals an artist facing death with clear eyes. Munch does not romanticize or avoid. He paints himself as he is, old, pale, fading, and he paints the reality of his situation. He is running out of time. The bed awaits. But even as he fades, he is still an artist. He is still observing, still recording, still making meaning out of his own ending. 9. Unfinished Self-Portrait by Rembrandt. Rembrandt van Rijn died in 1669 at age 63. His final year was one of poverty and isolation, yet he continued to paint some of his most profound works. His final self-portrait, painted in the year of his death, shows a man who has lost everything but his genius. In this portrait, Rembrandt looks at us from deep shadows. His face is a map of age and experience, wrinkled, saggy, and worn. He wears a simple cap and a dark robe. There are no symbols of status or wealth. He is just a man, alone with his reflection. But his eyes are extraordinary. They are wise, tired, and deeply human. Rembrandt had once been the most famous artist in Amsterdam. He had known great wealth and success, but by 1669 he was bankrupt. His wife was long dead, and his only son had died just a year earlier. He was living in a small house, his possessions sold to pay debts. Yet in this final self-portrait there is no bitterness. There is only a profound, quiet honesty. He used the paint thickly, especially on his face, creating texture that mirrors the texture of aged skin. He did not try to make himself look younger or better. He painted the truth of his aging body and his weary soul. The darkness surrounding him is absolute, but his face is illuminated by a soft, warm light, the light of self-knowledge. This final work reveals the power of acceptance. Rembrandt has accepted his age, his losses, and his approaching death. He does not need wealth or fame anymore. He only needs the truth. This is the portrait of a man who has seen everything life can offer and has found peace in simply being who he is. The Burned Canvases by Joan Miro. Our final work takes us to the 20th century and the Spanish artist Joan Miro. Miro lived to be 1983. His final series of paintings, known as the Burned Canvases, represents a radical and aggressive ending to a long and celebrated career. In his late 80s, Miro created a series of paintings that he then set on fire. He would paint his characteristic symbols, stars, eyes, and abstract shapes, and then use a blowtorch to burn holes in the canvas. He would then hang the charred, damaged works in the gallery. Miro was a master of color and playful form, but at the end of his life he felt a need to rebel against his own success and the commercialization of art. He wanted to strip away the prettiness, to confront destruction and violence, to show the reality of the world he was leaving. The Burned Canvases are shocking and powerful. They show the beauty of the artistic mark and the brutal reality of fire. They are works of creation and destruction at once. Miro was not afraid to destroy his own work to reach a deeper truth. He was saying that even at 90, an artist can still be a revolutionary. This final gesture reveals an artist who refused to be comfortable or safe. Miro was confronting the ultimate destruction, death, by enacting it on his own canvases. He was showing that beauty can exist even in ruins, that the act of creation is powerful enough to survive even fire. It is a bold and fearless farewell to a world he had enriched with his imagination for nearly a century. And so, dear friends, we reach the end of our journey through the final works of these 10 remarkable artists. From the turbulent wheat fields of Van Gogh to the charred canvases of Miro, we have seen how creative souls face their endings with courage, honesty, and a persistent need to make meaning. These paintings are more than just art. They are human documents. They remind us that our time is limited, but our ability to create beauty is not. They show us that we can face our mortality with our eyes open, our hands busy, and our hearts full of the need to say one last thing to the world. As you prepare for sleep, let the images of these final works drift through your mind. Think of the devotion of Cezanne, the honesty of Rembrandt, and the resilience of O'Keeffe. Remember that we are all, in our own way, creating the stories of our lives until the very last brushstroke. May your dreams be filled with the beauty these artists left behind. May you find peace in the knowledge that creativity is eternal, even if we are not. Sleep well, dear friends, and know that the beauty you create in your own life is a gift that endures. Good night.